3, 2, 1, let's go.
152 yards. Should be just a nice, comfortable 9-iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
Yo, 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 ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, golf fans of the internet, welcome into the Preferred Lines podcast, the Players Championship recap show, Valspar Championship preview show. But before we get to that, my co-host just hit a winner on Cam Young at the Players. John, I'm a little disappointed this evening. I can't deny it. But how are you feeling, sir?
Just an absolute roller coaster from T-box number 2 when Colin Morikawa withdraws to everything that happened between then and the back nine of Sunday, where it just looks like a Ludvig runaway, who was my first man off the card. And I feel like I talked about that a lot on every podcast this week. Is like, I have nothing bad to say about Ludvig. I was on him last week. I think he will continue to play well. I just didn't have room for him. And to see him kind of have this tournament in his grasp the entire time gave me tons of anxiety, because I basically, ripped up the Colin ticket immediately. And had I not been on Colin, I absolutely would have been on Lud. So I feel for him, but selfishly, I'm happy that I don't have to live with that burden. And ultimately it was Cam and Fitz at the end. And I'm repping New York Golf Club as I was at the start of last week. I thought both of those guys had a really good chance this week. So it was just a good players week for me, but just the viewing experience. I mean, it lived up to the March's major billing. Absolutely. I mean, and you would know better than anybody because you were on the grounds.
I was on the grounds. More on that in a minute. Interesting stuff. New York Golf Club teammates. A shame they're not going to be in TGL this Tuesday night. Would love to speak with both of them. But unbelievable performance. The players absolutely lived up to the hype. We'll talk about the Brian Rolapp press conference. We'll go ahead and put a bow on TPC Sawgrass before we shift gears to this week and the 2026 Valspar Championship. Before we get too far into the show and the players recap, got to mention, show as always, proudly brought to you by the good folks over at Read the Line. I was on site almost all week with Keith Stewart. Our main man Dave was there as well. Nice to get together with the gang up there in Ponte Vedra Beach. The promo code to get access to all the picks, all the newsletters, all the insights, every single matchup pick, every single top 20 bet that Keith places each and every week is Lines25. Brings it down to $7.50. John, we're both rocking the Read the Line tees here. Big week for the brand at TPC Sawgrass. Let's get right into it. Main takeaways, I guess we'll start with Cam. Unbelievable. Maybe the greatest 57-degree wedge, he said it was, on 17 that we may ever see, followed by the drive of his life on 18, the longest in the ShotLink era on the 18th hole at TPC Sawgrass, 375 yards right down the pipe. They asked him post-round what it was like to play on a course with so many booby traps, and I think that's a good way to describe what we saw at TPC Sawgrass. His words, absolutely exhausting. So much anxiety, he said, in this win versus his win at the Wyndham Championship just 10 starts ago, where he was up 9 at the turn. Two completely different scenarios, but a jam-packed leaderboard down the stretch, and our boy Cam Young comes through for the victory.
Yeah, Cam Young, 4 pars on the 4 par 5s. So he really grinded today, and he's still, what did he shoot? 4 under on the tournament, and just did nothing all week on the par 5. So it really was this helter-skelter kind of performance where he was finding birdies where other guys weren't. And that's kind of what I liked about Cam Young coming into this week, that if you are driving it at an elite level, you will find birdies on some of these holes that others will not. And that's what he was doing. I mean, he threw some darts on 13. He threw a dart in there. He was kind of going blow for blow with Fitzpatrick, and they talked about, that TGL brotherhood, that it was a comfortable pairing for both of them, and it was a comfortable pairing for Ludvig and Thor Bjornsson. We'll talk about that as well. But maybe that's what just made it such an entertaining round, that these guys were kind of just like self-aware the whole time that it was going to be a grind, and you just saw everything today. But with Cam, ever since what we saw at the Ryder Cup, it's really felt like this guy is realizing his full potential and a big year was ahead for him. It's now 3 straight top 10s. I want to talk about the Masters on this podcast as well, because we got a whole lot of trending elite stars across the world right now and some waning superstars in Rory and Scottie. So it is going to be fireworks at the first major. But what a way to kick off, the biggest event of the year so far.
Unbelievable victory for him. Congratulations to yourself and anyone who backed Cam Young. Way to see the writing on the walls there. Good number on Cam Young's. It kind of floated up this week as well. So great opportunity to pounce. Obviously, his self-belief and now confidence is they're up to par with his ability level and his skill. So I think that obviously the sky is the limit. The other guy that I thought the sky is the limit for was of course Ludvig. Who I was there to witness an unbelievable round on Friday. The guy, it was one of the most perfect rounds of golf I've ever witnessed, I think, from start to finish. The aggressiveness and the driver for Ludvig Åberg is an absolute weapon and a spectacle to see in person. He mentioned that he was going to play aggressive because if he ends up losing, he can blame, he's willing to live with that as long as he's playing aggressive. And I think on the par 5, 11th hole, it maybe bit him there when any other person could have laid up. All he needed really was birdie there to maintain control of the tournament. 12, almost everyone was clubbing down and taking iron off that tee. He toe hooked the drive, 2 shots, tournament over, seemingly blew it down the stretch. And once again, we're in the scenario where a back 9 lead on a Sunday in the state of Florida is never safe. And that was on full display again. Where do we go from here with Ludvig?
Yeah, I mean, talking about aggressive, even on the second hole, he was like 250 out in the rough and he was ripping 3-wood out of there. And I was like, oh, wow, we are playing. You're not kidding.
3-wood.
Yeah, you were playing fully aggressive. You're not laying up whatsoever. So I guess that's just his MO. It did remind me of his final round at Augusta. I think it was last 2 years ago, when he was in the mix and Scottie just outlasted him and he put one in the drink. I want to say it was 14 or 15. On the back, him and Colin both put it in the water. So that was kind of the end of their round as well. And yeah, it's just the water is kind of the bugaboo for Ludvig. And he's very outspoken about the nerves. Like he was not hiding from that. He said in the interviews afterwards, I felt nervous Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I felt the same nerves today as I did before. He got some good breaks earlier in the week, chipped in a few times, got some good bounces. I think the bad breaks kind of caught up to him. But he just wasn't finding the center of the club face at the end. That was kind of the undoing. Like he was, even the shots that were going in the middle of the fairway were like toe hooks. So he was kind of hanging on by a thread. It's hard to win wire to wire. It wasn't a true wire to wire, but it really felt like it was his tournament to lose from like early into Friday until Sunday. And that's just a lot of load to bear at a tournament as big as the Players.
The tournament and the course being there, every shot brings about like a level and a thought process of like, I can make double bogey here with one bad swing from the start of the tournament to the end. And that is a lot of weight on your shoulders. And one thing that I particularly noticed with Ludvig that I found so impressive with that Friday round is what happened with Colin, right? Second hole withdraw. You put 2 of the faster players on the PGA Tour next to each other, now playing in a twosome for 2 straight days, and they're waiting on every shot, John. Like every tee box, they're there, and it's hands on the hips, and it is a long, monotonous wait. They were behind Brooks and Tony Finau and Batia, and it wasn't really them. Honestly, they're pretty fast players as well. It was the group in front of them. It was Alex Noren and whoever he was playing with were taking an abundance of time. And I think it was a strain on Ludvig to play that way. It just caught up to him in the end. So much anxiety for so long. And then you make one bad swing and it just compounds into errors and 3 putts. And I really thought that if he could have just steadied the ship there on like 14, maybe he had another run in him down 16 and down the stretch, but ultimately that wasn't the case. And you got to give credit to the two guys who persevered. Not only Ludvig, though, I know you want to speak about a couple of Scandinavians that played really well this week. Thor was right there. Obviously, the quad on the fourth hole. What an amazing hole that fourth hole is as well. There are so many good ones at TPC Sawgrass. Victor Hovland gained 7.5 around the greens this week. All those guys there and kind of mixing. The Norwegian contingent on the grounds was very strong. There were Swedish jerseys, there was Viking helmets, there was long hair. It was good to see those people out and about, and they all three played pretty worthy golf for the week.
Yeah, I mean, you got Stellan Skarsgård's nominated at the Oscars Sunday night too. Like the Scandinavians are just having a week right now, and you know, shout out to them because you wouldn't think Scandinavia golf epicenter, but I know like Michael Thorbjornsen is second generation. You know, his dad came to the States from there. He didn't really grow up there. Victor is more like native to Scandinavia as is Ludvig, and he went to college here. So, you know, these guys weren't exactly like tested in the snow, but we got some video cuts of Ludvig hitting golf shots in the snow. So we know he goes back there. Shout out to Scandinavian golf. They seem to be on the rise. That's good news for Ryder Cup futures for them, I suppose. Although Thorbjornsen is on our side as more claiming Boston over, you know, his ancestral roots. But yeah, no, just top to bottom, what an event. It could have went in so many different directions. I think, like you said about Ludvig, just to put a bow on it, like you're going to make bogeys or worse here, and you have to just take that on the chin and move on. And it just started to unravel after he put one in the water on 11, where he, you know, if he collected himself, there was a par to be made there. And then the next hole, I think, was also an issue on 12. They talked about they had this predetermined game plan, right? And I think you have to give yourself a little bit of flexibility here to say, hold on, something significant just happened here. Maybe we need to, you know, stray from the plan because you're not actually catching this driver great right now. And he was the only guy who hit driver there. So I think that caught them. You know, that bit them in the butt a little bit, not being able to be as adaptable with the game plan when things weren't going right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, and before we kind of put a bow on the players, the three big names heading into the week. Interesting storylines around all three of them. Obviously, Colin Morikawa's second hole, practice swing, injures his back. The highest owned guy in DFS, the most tipped guy on the betting charts, out of the tournament. Rory ends up playing, albeit not great, could never really seem to get anything open, seeming to not really trust what I noticed, his turn. Very uncertain, which you could see on a lot of balls that were kind of low and hooking and not high like he normally hits it. Leads me to believe he did not really trust his oblique turn, which is normally one of the most powerful in the game. And then I wanted to ask you about Scottie Scheffler. So seeing him, you know, a lot of the tournaments I go to, Scottie's not there. At the same time, I want to give him credit. I also want to say like something, he seems to be oblivious or not wanting to actualize maybe a potential issue in his game. He's very obstinate with the media. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. He doesn't want to engage with any fans, which you know irks me. He doesn't want to high five any kids. He just wants to stay in his little bubble and act like everything's okay. At the same time, everything might be completely overblown with them. The players sent the notes to the media after post round 4. It was his 27th consecutive top 25 finish on the PGA Tour. I know he's got a long way to go to catch the cut streak of Mr. Tiger Woods, but Tiger's most consecutive top 25s were 38. So he's 10 away in terms of top 25 finishes. It feels like it's going to take some sort of unbelievable occurrence for him not to finish there because he has not played well. He is annoyed. He is fist pumping missed putts. He is steaming. Like he was on, I was following him and I was telling Keith, like he's on full club snap watch for like 5 holes in between shots. Absolutely red hot. What did you make of his performance and where are you assessing Scottie Scheffler's game right now headed into the majors?
Yeah, very concerned. This is like the most concern and the floor outcome is what we're seeing from Scottie right now, but the floor is like struggling to get inside the top 20 and not actually being a competitive presence in big events week over week now, where it's really just been the Amex, and then he hasn't actually been asserting his dominance in any of these tournaments. A lot of his top tens earlier in the season are kind of backdoor, played himself out of the tournament early and just makes a charge when it doesn't really matter. So we haven't really seen that presence of world number one manifest this year outside of his very first event. There's been a lot of talk about the driver. He's testing different things. He left the driver that was great for him last year. He went back to it in the middle of the round. So he's tinkering. So he's obviously trying to find something, but off the tee is not so much the issue. It's approach that's the biggest concern for me.
Yeah.
He lost strokes on approach for the first time since the BMW in 2024 last week, and he was about even to the field this week. I think like exactly neutral on approach through 4 rounds at the Players now. So it's 2 weeks in a row. It's not the dominant Scottie Scheffler on approach, and that throughout his career has been what he hangs his hat on. So that's a major red flag to me. I don't know when we'll see the books start to adjust on his odds from foregone conclusion favorite to how he's actually playing now. I think it's going to be gradual, and you're going to see a terrible number on Scottie for a couple more weeks. We'll probably see him once more before the Masters. We might see him in Texas. Maybe we won't see him. Maybe his game is so lost that he just says, I got to like get back in the lab.
Don't tell him it's lost, though. Don't tell him it's lost. He don't like to hear that.
No,
he doesn't like any sort of criticism that his game is slipping a little bit. He takes a lot of offense when people bring that up.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, we're grading on a different scale when it comes to Scottie Scheffler. And if it was anybody else in the world, we wouldn't be panicking about him finishing top 25 2 weeks in a row. But he's the world number one, and he just hasn't looked himself the last couple of weeks. And to your point, the more you kind of circumvent those questions in the media, the more you get this groundswell of speculation that won't go away. So I think you're exactly right. Like if things aren't going well, be honest with the media so that we don't take it and run with it and talk about all these speculations. What's wrong with Scottie Scheffler? If you're testing clubs, then there's your answer. I'm just trying a couple things before the Masters. We'll be fine.
Before we move on from the Players, something that happened before the tournament, we got to see new PGA Tour CEO Brian Rolapp face the media. He gave his 6 main key elements of strategy for the PGA Tour moving forward. I was very impressed that he stood up there for the entirety of the time and took all 31 questions from the media. And at the end of it, essentially asked, are there any more questions? Like if there were more questions, he wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't running from anything. If he didn't know the answer to things, which there were a few he didn't, he basically said, I don't know. We're going to figure that out. But I felt it was very forthcoming. The bar that was set in terms of these press conferences from the guy in charge was very low. So it wasn't too difficult for him to exceed that. But what was your top takeaway and something that has you most excited about the future of the PGA Tour from that presser?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of standing ovation from me. Bravo, round of applause when I finished like listening to that presser. Like it's everything that golf fans want to hear, the direction the tour is going in. That's not a coincidence because everything that all of his answers were grounded in this notion that this is a product for the fans and the fans drive the product, and we have to compete. The PGA Tour has to compete with other sports entities, and he has, that extensive NFL background. He's treating the PGA Tour like the NFL, and he knows the blueprint of how to get the masses excited about the product. And that's what he wants to do with the PGA Tour, which is so refreshing because previous regimes were very much like, take care of the players, whatever the players want. We bend the knee to the players, and when the players play well, the fans will appreciate seeing good golf. And there's some truth in that, but obviously it's reached a point, an inflection point where the fans feel like they're not getting the best product anymore. And if what the players want is no cut so they get guaranteed their money and they don't have to play as many events, then that's great for them. But that's not great for the fans. So we've went too far, and now he's walking that back and saying, yeah, you're right. We should be seeing the best players in the world more frequently. So I think what I was most excited about when I heard all of this was that there is a plan for a 2-circuit tour, because for me, I want to see golf every single week, and I don't want to lose these opposite field events. I don't want to lose the Cognizant Classic. I don't want it to be like every other week there's a PGA Tour event and all the best players play there, and then a bunch of players lose their jobs because there's just not enough events. It seems like Brian Rolapp wants there to be two tours. One is the prominent stars playing all together, but in larger fields, and they're guaranteed to go to the biggest events. And then in between those, it's basically like a more scaled version of the Aon Swing 5, where you can play up to it, but you're not going to play in as many of the big events. Those are reserved for the best players.
Right. Absolutely. I think I totally agree with you. I was thoroughly impressed. I think my biggest two takeaways were his mentioning of 21 to 26 events being a part of this and doubling the amount of signature events, which I think is fantastic. I love that sort of strategy. I think that it's going to be a challenging proposition to pitch that to some of his biggest players, though. So I understand why. You want these signature field purses, you want these sponsors and these people that are choosing to back tour events and back the purse in a field to feel like they are getting the best players, right? But Rory's not used to playing 21 to 26 times on the PGA Tour. He has his 3 or 4 DP World Tour starts. He's making on average 16 starts on the PGA Tour. 5 more starts is a lot in a single year. That's 5 additional weeks of practice, pro-ams, 4 days of golf. Asking Scottie Scheffler to play more is a difficult proposition, I think, for him. So getting those stars on board, I think, is a big component to this. But what I was also most excited about is something that I have been advocating for since we started this podcast. Match Play Tour Championship.
Sure.
Now, how this is integrated, I think there are still different ways in which that is possible. And I think there are ways that you can get creative that I have positioned before where you are advantaging those players who have higher seeds, whether they start up one stroke, or they start up a half and you match play it out, but making sure that you don't end up with 28 versus 24 in the finals, I think is the biggest fear for them. But he comes from the NFL. He understands the winner go home mentality and the type of drama that can bring to a postseason. And I love the integration of that moving forward for the PGA Tour. I think that is a step in the right direction amongst many that Rolapp is kind of spearheading here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think unanimously we miss match play. We love the Ryder Cup. We don't get the Ryder Cup every year. Sometimes we get the President's Cup, but it's not the same. That's clearly a signal to Brian Rolapp. Like, there's demand here. There is interest in match play. We should not have lost it off the schedule entirely. It's not a great TV product. That's an opportunity for them to innovate something. If there's not as many golf shots to show, fill it with interesting B-roll, backstory things about the players. Make it a platform so that we learn more about who these players are, how they got here, what they're about. I think that's ultimately what makes TGL great, is because it gives star players a platform in primetime TV to just showcase their personality. So maybe that's how they take match play. I've always felt the like the Wyndham Rewards top 10 after the Wyndham Championship, whoever, like, they pay out the top 10, whatever it is, that's your tour champion. That the person over the course of the full season who ranked number 1 in FedEx Cup points, just award it there and have fun with match play afterwards. And then I think we're perfectly good. I don't necessarily love match play determining who the best player on the PGA Tour was, because it's a little bit more random. We know that. But if we just make it this entertainment product that's something different, I love it.
Okay. Let's kind of shift gears a little bit, John. Let's do a little bit of bullish or bearish here. I'm gonna be real quick with mine. I'll go ahead and start with what I'm bullish on in the world of golf this week. It's TPC Sawgrass. TPC Sawgrass is absolutely relentless. Hold on one sec. Absolutely relentless. From tee to green. What is the beauty of it is every single hole, like, you end up thinking about the next hole, which I think is so cool and innovative, because when you hit the shot on 11, you're thinking about the drivable 12th, and then you're thinking about the shot on 13, and then, oh my God, here comes the most difficult hole on the course, the 14th. And how are they going to find the fairway on 15? And then 16 is going to be a birdie up. And when they finish 16, it's all about 17. But then that difficult tee shot is coming on 18. It is just gut check city everywhere. It is perfect. It is so well designed. It is so fan friendly, from the merch booth to the concessions to the activation areas for fans among the course. I forgot how good it was because it had been 2 years since I had been back, but it is a special feeling when you walk on property there. And while I do not agree with the assessment that this is on the level of a major championship in terms of historical context, I love that I know every hole on this course, and you know exactly what's coming, and you have that context of what's happened in previous years to go back on, where we may not have that at Aronimink or Shinnecock. I can't know every hole that's down the back nine at Shinnecock. I know what's ahead at the Players Championship, and I love that. So super bullish on this course. Love this event. Can't get enough of it.
Yeah, and you would know this from being on the grounds, but I feel like it's almost only comparable to Augusta, the roars of the crowd, where if a big shot happens in front of you, you know exactly what just happened, especially on those last 3 holes. It's all right on top of each other, but I'm sure there's other corners of the course as well where like it's a mental mental gymnastics to hear all these roars when you're somebody like Ludvig and you have this lead that you're trying to protect, but people are cheering and you're like, why are they cheering? Who did that? Hopefully it wasn't somebody close. So just because of the trees, they're not like dense. So you can hear a lot throughout the property, even though it's super crowded. So I'm sure you picked up on that as well being there. But I mean, I love Sawgrass. It's probably my favorite 18 holes we see on the PGA Tour.
It's so good. What are you bullish on, buddy?
So I'm going to go back to the Rolapp conversation because
Okay.
I'm so bullish on Brian Rolapp, the CEO of the PGA Tour. And I put a tweet out that was like, it can't be understated how unprepared or unfit for the role Jay Monahan was in the position that he was given and the ultimatums that he gave the players with Liv, and he just mismanaged everything. And we couldn't have had a worse leader of the PGA Tour at the time. I firmly believe that. And I thought that was a consensus feeling, but there were some people who pushed back and they were like, oh, he was dealt a rough deal with COVID and it was unprecedented times. And the way I see it is like COVID was the greatest opportunity for golf ever. It was a boom for people playing golf. It was a boom for people watching golf because it was the only thing to watch, and it's an outdoor sport. It's not a contact sport. Like everything was perfect for golf. It was the perfect time for an adequate CEO to step up and grow the game even further. And what happened was the opposite. There was a rift. He didn't take Liv seriously. He was, dismissing Greg Norman in the beginning when they could have partnered up and not had the separation happen. So I thought it was a masterclass of mismanagement from Jay Monahan. And we've seen that immediately with Brian Rolapp coming in. The thing that I love the most about him as the CEO is he's very open and honest and humble about the fact that he's not a PGA Tour guy. He's a fresh blood that I'm coming in. I have no ego here about it has to be my way. I'm simply observing what's not working and listening to the fans and taking all of this feedback, listening to the players as well. But I want to make this better. I want to make the sport better. I want to make it commercially appealing to more people. And that's my ultimate goal. And he's very well spoken and he has a plan. So it's just all very refreshing for us to be where we are with the PGA Tour, with his leadership, everything he laid out, with us being so passionate about the PGA Tour and covering it every single week. I feel like it's in really good hands right now to continue to build this momentum and just, I was concerned before the press conference that we were losing events, that we were going to have this condensed schedule, that there was going to be no golf outside of mid-February to August, and then what's going to happen after that. But I feel a lot more reassured now under the leadership of Rolapp after that press conference.
Very pro Rolapp here. Bearish takes. Okay, so I don't really know how to classify titling this, but I'm going to try to be as transparent as I can here. Bearish a little bit on the media experience around the PGA Tour. And I hope this is something that can be addressed by Brian Rolapp. There is a bit of a prehistoric feeling in there where the majority of the media, I will say at least half of them, want to sit in the media center all day. They want to sit there. They don't even want to go outside into the scrums. They want to pour through transcripts. They want to get their 400-page article out. They want to find some clickbait headline that they can, some salacious term that someone used in a transcript without even hearing the guy say it. And they want to run with their story. I'm not that guy, right? I got to get out there. I got to get in the mix. I got to get my 20,000 steps in. I want to report on what I see on the grounds. For those of you, because I've had a bunch of people reach out, yes, I was asked to take down the Siwoo Kim video, as well as a handful of other content pieces and pictures and stuff that I put throughout the week. I understand the policy is in place. I have an argument that that was against a violation of that, but that's beside the point. I want to be out there mixing it, and I want to be able to report on what I see. And I don't want to have it ever come through a negative lens from anybody. I am there to promote the PGA Tour. I am there to engage with the fans of the PGA Tour through my platform, as small as it is, and try to reach as many people and connect these players with what they're wearing, to the fans that are following them on attendance, whether it's Siwoo's fans or Ludvig's fans, or just try to capture moments that I think are really cool and relatable. And him smoking a cigarette was not meant to be negative. It was meant to be fun. It was meant to be funny. It was meant to be relatable. It was meant to be, this is one of the guys. And if anything, I would say that it brought people closer and engaged people that never knew anything about Siwoo Kim, that were like, what, like, this guy's hilarious.
Yeah.
Right. So the experience kind of obviously ended on a very sour note for me. And I don't want to ever put anyone in a position where I'm the cause of any trouble. I want to push the envelope. I think it's part of what I'm here for. I think it's part of what everyone wants me to do when I'm there at those events. And I hope that there are some adjustments moving forward so that I'm able to promote the tour in a way that I think is fair and equitable, and gives the people what they want to see, like a lens from someone who's at the event on site, who may be able to capture things that they don't see through the coverage or clipping a transcript, right? So enough said. Bearish on the ending of that experience, but the beginning of that experience, fantastic all the way up to that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're underplaying your platform, because before the video was taken down, it really made its rounds across all the golf media. I mean, people, everybody saw it,
buddy. Like major networks, like, can we use this? I'm like,
oh yeah. And I truly don't think what you get in a picture, Siwoo, killing time on a long backup, is an abuse of like media privilege. It's really like he was out in the open doing this, like any fan. There were probably people all around you who saw the same thing, right? So it's not like it was an abuse of credentials or anything. It's just you never know what some people are going to be offended by, I guess. But I loved it. We all saw it. We know more about the players now. And maybe Brian Rolapp wants there to be more authenticity with this tour and less hiding behind who these people are. Let's get their personalities out there.
Yeah.
So I loved it. For me, my bearish for this week is more conversation that I saw around social media that I think got out of hand, which is this lazy TGL causes back injuries narrative. What I just like. At first it was a joke, and I was like, okay, fine. And then it kept getting momentum. People kept talking about this of like, oh, TGL is a problem. Actually, they're playing too much golf and they're swinging too hard. And I'm like, okay, let's take a step back here. Jake Knapp had a back injury. Austin Smotherman had a back injury. That was 2 of the 4 back injuries coming in here between those guys plus Rory and Colin. Half of them are TGL guys. Half of them are not. It's golf. You're going to have back injuries. Like, especially if you're lifting, which I think is the common thread with all of these guys. It's more of like they're pushing themselves too much weight training in the gym, and you can't pull fat. They often say, right? And we're just building too much muscle, and we're not as pliable as we used to be. Justin Thomas's injury has nothing to do with TGL. He hadn't been playing TGL, and he actually used TGL as part of his rehab process. So it was actually a positive for him. So I just think it's such a ridiculous narrative.
Ridiculous.
It's not travel related. Most of these guys are taking private jets across the country. Rory's saying he sleeps better on his jet than he does at home, or in like the Airbnb that he stays in when he's traveling. So it's such a ridiculous narrative. And I feel like us, you more so than me, but having both been at TGL and seeing it firsthand, other people haven't. They may not understand. It couldn't be farther from the truth that TGL is causing injuries. And just to finalize that point, you look at the top of the leaderboard this week with all the negative sentiment all week. It's 3 New York Golf Club guys who finished 1, 2, and 3. So it's not a detriment. TGL is here for the long run. Who's to say if Cam Young could have won the Players if not for the refs he got in on Stinger and all those other holes, shot shaping and everything. So we're still bullish on TGL, bearish on the haters.
Absolutely. TGL Tuesday night, unserious take that TGL is causing injuries. Completely unserious. Not unserious. The course guide coming up right now. All right, John, course guide this week, once again, presented by the folks over at Wolfhammer. New sponsor alert. If you weren't here last week, go to the App Store right now, friends. Download the Wolfhammer app, the Alpha app, if you are betting on the course with your friends. You want to go play 18 holes. It has got all different gambling games loaded in, preloaded in, fully integrates with GIN handicaps. You can customize each individual game with your own levels of customization. Over 15,000 variations to set up your Sunday game, to set up your Friday game. Anything you're out there with the boys, use the Wolfhammer app as you play. John, we're super excited to be their partners and can't wait. Got anything about Wolfhammer this week?
No, it's just officially all the snow is gone in New York. Last time we recorded this time last week, it was beginning to melt. I can smell the golf around me now. I can't wait to take the action that I put out there every week, watching the golf and actually stake it in myself against my friends using Wolfhammer. Those guys are awesome. We've had already one conversation with them. I'm sure we'll have many more. We're super stoked for them to be, partnered up with us in support of this podcast, because we all have this shared understanding that golf betting and having a stake in the action, whether you're watching it or playing it, it just makes the experience that much better. So shout out Wolfhammer.
Well said. Hammer down. Go download the Wolfhammer app in the App Store right now. First month free, courtesy of the Preferred Lines podcast. John, let's talk about Valspar. Innisbrook, the Copperhead Course specifically. Give me the rundown on the course specs.
Course specs, we are at 7,352 yards, which, if that number sounds familiar, it is exactly the same distance as TPC Sawgrass.
Wow.
The difference is this is a par 71 with 5 par 3s and still 4 par 5s. So you just have a lot less par 4s on this course than you do on most par 71s. The scoring is always kept in check here. We usually live in that like 10 to 12 under par, which is really unusual for a course that has 4 par 5s, that you're not able to get that many scoring opportunities. Typically you take advantage of the par 5s. Somebody like Ludvig last week, he was about 10 under or so on the par 5s alone. That's not really the case here. There's harder to score on, and the par 3s are bears here. There's 5 of them. They're all long. And because of that concentration of long par 3s and positional angular setup of this course, you have to lay back a little bit off the tee. You get a lot of long iron approaches here. So many of the approach shots come from beyond 175 yards. And because of that, I feel like there's been a little bit more sticky course history here. It's the guys who hit the long irons well and are super reliable and accurate off the tee. Last year, if you look on Data Golf, the radar of accuracy favorability versus bomber favorability, it's like breaking the scale towards accuracy. I was reading the GCSA sheet. Looks like it was a colder winter, so they overseeded a bit more, which means the rough is going to be even thicker than it has been in the past, which means even more emphasis on hitting these fairways. So I'm really putting a lot of emphasis on driving ability, on positional short courses, like less than driver courses are fine. It's also, as far as Florida golf goes, I feel like very unique in the sense that
Very.
a lot of elevated greens, a lot of blind shots, a lot of hidden greens. So it's like a field golfer's course in a way, but really, really strong emphasis on great approach play, and we've seen that in the leaderboards over the years. It was a Victor versus JT showdown last year. It was Cam Young in the mix the year before that. Keith Mitchell was ball striking the hell out of it early, and then he kind of fell apart when he flew too close to the sun. And Sam Burns has, been great here over the years. Paul Casey as well. There's a lot of like high end ball strikers and Bermuda specialists, guys who play well on a pure Bermuda green surface. Those are the guys we're looking for this week. Any other notes you have on?
Yeah, I
on
mean, you mentioned it, like very unusual for Florida, and that it's a tough, super undulating tree line track with a ton of dog legs, makes for a very unusual layout. You mentioned the last 5 winners: Hovland at -11, Malnati at -12, Taylor Moore at -10, and then Sam Burns won in back-to-back years. The course history stickiness narrative does stand up very well here that you have in a relatively short history of this tournament. We have seen 4 people win this event twice. A number of winners have also finished runner-up before. So even Victor Hovland last year finished 3rd on his debut in 2021. You have a lot of those guys that stand up year over year, and it's kind of rare that you see guys repeat at the rate that you would at this course. One of the biggest notes that I have is the difficult nature off the tee and how that does end up putting emphasis as a natural result on long iron play. So driver usage is way down at Valspar, 54% driver usage on over the last 5 years of data. For some context, PGA Tour average is 69%, so nearly 15% less driver usage. Yet fairway accuracy is also below average. So even though you're not taking driver, you're still hitting less fairways than you are on the PGA Tour average. And that natural result in hard to hit fairways, less than driver, means an abundance of shots from beyond 175 yards. Where you said that yardage is very similar to TPC Sawgrass, we had a lot of shots, I would say, from like 130 to 180 at Sawgrass. Here, you're 175 to 225. So very much a second shot golf course. Get it in play off the tee and kind of lean on your long irons and hope to have a good putting week. But also another very tough spot, just like this week. If you get to -13 at this tournament, you're winning a lot of years. You're winning 5 of the last 7 years that this tournament has been played. -13 would be a winning score here. So look for that to kind of be a target number in your head. You're not out of this with a 1 to 2 under par round over the first couple of days. This course plays about a stroke over par historically.
Yeah. I love this event. I think the players love this event too. Like the Valspar as a sponsor does a great job here. They got the custom caddy bid so that you can put whatever nickname you want on the back of your bib. It's just like you got the paint cans as the tee markers. Like it's just like an aesthetically fun event that the players enjoy going to. The field itself this year is much better than I expected. It was great last year, and they followed it up with another great field. They benefited from, we talked about match play before. It used to be match play came right after this, and nobody wanted to go API players this event plus match play. So this was a skip. They've benefited from that. They're going to go back to Texas after this. So you get a couple bigger names, which we'll talk about when we go through the betting board. But it's a good field.
Let's do it right now. Final event of the Florida Swing. You talked about those big names here. Let's check them out. Betting board odds powered by DraftKings for the Valspar Championship this week. These odds were done earlier today. May have slightly pivoted, may pivot tomorrow if you're checking this show out on Monday based on the results of the TPC Sawgrass Players Championship. But here's where we're at: 11 to 1. Xander Schauffele. 16-1, defending champion Victor. 18-1, you get Fitz. Then at 24-1, Batia, Spieth, Bridgman. Cantlay right there at 25. Thoughts opening up John Hasselbauer on the top of the board?
I'm gonna tell a very quick story because I hit Victor Hovland here last year at 80-1, and I had JT on the card too. So it was very similar to last week, or I guess this past week with the players where it was stressful, but I had both of the guys. It was gonna be either one of them, and we made it either way. Last year, I started my my tradition with the shed, where as soon as I start, if I win an outright, I reinvest into the shed, and as paying homage to the Valspar Championship, I painted the shed sky blue with the winnings from Victor Hovland's win. And I'm going to tell a quick story. I went to Lowe's, which I never go to Lowe's. I'm more of a Home Depot guy. I go to Lowe's and I say, I want a sky blue. Any sky blue will do. It has to be Valspar paint. And so they're like, oh, okay. Well, actually, we're running a deal. And we have a more premium paint, which I forget which, it was like Benjamin Moore, let's say.
Yeah.
You don't have to do primer, and it's cheaper. So it's just one coat. Just do the Benjamin Moore. And I said, it has to be Valspar paint. And they were like, I'm sorry, let me just, it'll save you half the time, and it's cheaper and it's better quality. So I'll just ring you up for the Benjamin Moore. I said, I'm sorry, I'm just a big fan of the Valspar brand. Can you just give me Valspar? And they're like about to get their manager over. Like, I cannot in good faith let you get the worst paint and pay more for it. And I was like, okay, I got to tell you the whole story. I do golf betting. The Valspar Championship was last week. Victor Hovland won. I'm doing, it's sort of a bit. It needs to be Valspar. I will not take no for an answer. And then we all had a good laugh about it, and I left with the paint. That's my Valspar story. Thank you, Victor Hovland. The reason that the shed is the blue that you see in Live from the Tout House is because it's Valspar paint. I love Valspar week. All of that to say, I think I'm going back to Victor Hovland this week.
All right.
I love that 16 number. We'll see if it stays there. He's in better form now than he was last year. The irons are great. He's been using the floaties on the driving range, which is concerning to me with the driver, but I think he's found something. The short game is like officially good. I think we can say, like, it's not even,
is it
bad? I know
7.5 gained at Sawgrass is a lot.
I know it's inflated because he's chipping in, which isn't necessarily always the indicator that he's consistently great with short game. And he's not a wizard. He's not doing these creative things that like a Justin Thomas is going to be doing. But it's not something that I'm looking at and I'm like, well, it's going to be tough. And I don't know if Victor Hovland can scramble. I feel okay about it. If he's still at 16-1 tonight, I'll probably just take that and move on. I love Victor here. Showed some stones last year. We know how sticky it is. We have so many repeat winners, as you said. Xander's a short number. Fitz is coming off an emotional high last week. Yeah. He's got a top 5 and 2 missed cuts here. Akshay, that's a short number to me. So when I look at those first 4 guys, and I'm just going to say no on speed. I know he's a defending champion. 24-1 I don't love. If it was longer, we'll talk about it. Those guys, it's definitely clearly Victor Hovland to me that I want exposure to. What do you think about the top of the board this week?
I do like Victor. Like you mentioned, I think Fitz is striping it so well. I think it's going to be a difficult week to expect another ceiling performance from him. Spieth, Bridgman, Cantlay, not really interested in any of them. Bridgman led the field in putting this week. I feel like that is a little bit unsustainable. I want to talk about Xander because I'm officially ready to find the off-ramp on my long-standing 8-month Xander take, which I've had basically, John, as you know, since we've started this show, where I'm like, Xander stinks, something's wrong. There's no way you can bet him anymore. Something is very off with Xander. Xander is back, and I've seen it. The focus is completely renewed. I saw it on the range Wednesday. I followed him a ton on Thursday. I talked to him in the room. He's got a different look about him. Okay. Keith talked to his coach a lot. I talked to him. He is feeling much better for the first time in a long time about his swing, and the results are there. Second in the field at approach at Sawgrass. He's got a 3rd and a 7th in his last 3 starts. He is also unbelievably good at this event, 12th, 5th, and 12th in his last 3 starts. Do I necessarily think that there is a ton of betting value in 11-1 and him at the top of the board? I'm unsure at this point. I'm going to kind of let that play out through the week, but I do feel like of all the players on this board at the moment, I feel like he is the most likely to win and deserving of being the favorite. And I just wanted to put this out there because I've been kind of, everyone's like, you're so anti-Xander for so long. I am done with that. Okay. Xander's back. He will be back I'm all for it. Okay. So officially have taken the off ramp on the Xander Stinks highway. It's time. The guy looks great. And I think he's got a big season ahead now.
Yeah, he had some concerning shots on Saturday where he almost like whiffed on a chip. He got it off the toe on 10, I believe, and some half-hearted layups he was hitting. But he bounced back really, really, really well today. He played himself into a position where he almost made it into a playoff on Sunday. I don't consider Xander to be a huge Bermuda guy because I don't believe he's won. I guess I mean he's very good at East Lakes. I should take that back. But like the Florida swing, he always is in the mix, and I haven't seen him dominate on the Florida swing. But you said it. Like the results have been there. He's a worthy favorite. He plays this event regularly, which is not always the case with the top players. He likes coming here.
Yeah.
So I am concerned about him in the field at the top. And I will just say, not to gloss over Bridgman because he was a factor in this event last year. He finished solo third. Had a chance to like he needed to hold out on 18, but Victor couldn't like pop the champagne immediately because Bridgman was still there, and that was well before Bridgman was playing the way he is now. And he's been pretty consistent, in these signature events. I know 24 is like crazy short, but he's playing some really good golf right now.
No doubt. 5th at the Players. One last note on Xander, because I talked to him after the Thursday round, which he played really well. He talked a lot about how he was basically being fed a ton of information from a lot of different people, and it was creating like a system overload for him in too many thoughts, too many things going on with his swing, too many opinions. And he said in that media scrum that he has stepped up and talked to his entire team and said, listen, I need you guys to talk first before you come to me. And his exact quote was like, I want to be like spoon fed, like a little tiny bit at a time. Like whatever you guys feel like is most important, I need like fed like a baby because you can't just throw it all at me because that's not working for me. So I love the fact that he was kind of speaking up for himself with his team and saying what we're doing right now isn't working. We need to change. We need to simplify things for me because this isn't working. So excited to see, like you mentioned, Bridgman 5th again at the Players after a win at the Genesis. He is number 1 in the field in putting. He's also 8th in approach play from beyond 150 yards. A couple of really good stats that align well this week. I do, however, feel that number is a little bit short. Moving on to slide 2 here, John. We start with Ben Griffin, who's missed consecutive cuts. You get Justin Thomas, who looked excellent. Spawn, Mitchell, Connors, Højgaard, Bradley, Thigala, Taylor, and John. I am absolutely taking 41-1 on Brooks Koepka. He looks good, man.
Yeah.
This is the final event of the Florida Swing. This is a less powerful field. You are essentially getting the same price as you did on Brooks Koepka to win the Players Championship in a field without Morikawa, without Scottie Scheffler, without Rory McIlroy. These big names are not here anymore, and Brooks is still playing really well. 13th at the Players, 9th at the Cognizant. He gained nearly 7 strokes on approach at the Players. He looked sharp. He fell asleep and had these 3-hole spells, like 2 of them where he got late. I don't know if it's lazy or lost a little bit of focus, but other than that, very positive performance for me. After gaining strokes putting at the Cognizant, he lost minimally at the Players, but I see a lot of things trending in the right direction. 12th in his last appearance back in 2022 before he left for Live at the Valspar Championship. He was really sharp that week, tee to green. I think things are aligning well, and I see his value being very likely that he wins an event in like the next 3 months. And he's not in a signature, so it's going to be one of these events. Here's one in Florida that is very demanding on approach play, which is his biggest strength right now. I want Brooks at 40 plus.
I agree. I think it's a good number, and I'm surprised that it's opened as large as it is, because he's shown good form at the Cognizant and at the Players. It's really just the putting that's been slow to come back, but he should putt well in Florida. He should be most familiar with Bermuda greens living here. I think you talk about tinkering when we talk about Xander. He's definitely doing that with the putter and just trying to find an answer. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Like we saw that with Colin Morikawa when it was everything tee to green is working and it's just the putter that's not, and you experiment. Eventually you find something you like, and that's the missing piece. That could be what we're seeing with Brooks this week. So at 40 to 1, I'm with you, and I'm not usually a Brooks guy because I feel like I'm usually paying up for him, but I don't think we're paying up at all at that price. So if it stays there, this will be one of those rare weeks, I think, where I do fit him on my card. And Thomas, obviously interesting. We have to talk about Justin Thomas. Looked great last week. Surprisingly, he was a fade for me the second week in a row because I just didn't think he could go from dead last at the Arnold Palmer Invitational to contending in such a grind of an event like the Players. And lo and behold, he almost won it. My concern with Thomas 3 weeks in a row now is he talked about not being able to go on the range, not being able to work through shots because it's conflicting with his rehab process.
Yeah.
And I wonder if 3 competitive rounds in a row is going to start to have him at odds with that, where he's going to exhaust himself and take it too far. It's thick rough. There's danger out there. He was hitting the old Justin Thomas types of shots at Sawgrass where he's like, on one leg and spinning around. And I'm squeamish watching it because I'm like, you just had back surgery and you're contorting in all these ways. So I'm not sure I trust Justin Thomas to have 2 straight great rounds and like get back to the Justin Thomas of old immediately. I think there's still time he needs to recover. Absent of the injury, I always love Justin Thomas at this event, but I think that's probably going to be a fade for me. And with that, I think it's really just Brooks on this page that I have interest in.
Yeah, the last guy I'll mention is he also looked really good when I saw him practicing, and I wasn't surprised to see him have a good week. This is a very fair price, I believe, on Corey Connors.
Yeah.
This is a terrific course fit for Corey Connors when he's in form. Now, I realize the start of the season was not good for Corey. Miscut at Phoenix, 70th at Pebble, 37th at Genesis. But the big thing that was weird is he was getting crushed on approach in all of those events. He had really slipped with his iron play. Something has clicked, and obviously he is one of the better approach and long iron players on the PGA Tour if you kind of zoom out and look long term. Plus 3.7 at the Arnold Palmer, plus 6 on approach at the Players with a T13 finish. He is trending in a very positive direction on a very good course fit at Innisbrook for Corey Connors. Page 3 here, John. We start with Rasmus Højgaard at 50 to 1, all the way up to Christian Bezuidenhout at 75 to 1. If you're with us on YouTube, you can see the full complement of the odds board here. Thought a little bit about, I initially came in this week, John. I'm like, I kind of want Rio. I was hoping to get a much better price than him because I know he was 4th at this event last year, played pretty good at the Players, ended up in 13th, and has just been in such good form for so long. I don't love the 55 to 1. I would love like 65, 70 there, but really not a whole lot that sticks out to me as a value position here early in the week. Anything to you?
I am on Rio. He was my spotlight player this week. I think and I understand, like, I didn't know where his odds were going to be when I wrote that. It's a little bit shorter. We're used to Rio being like way undervalued and 150 to 1 in every signature event, despite top 10ing in all of them. And so I wasn't sure how much they were going to adjust for that in a non-signature event. But this is an event that he really came into his own for the first time on the PGA Tour with that, top 5. He was firmly in the mix throughout that tournament. He had some really like great recovery shots, I remember, without having any idea who this guy was. He's 23 years old. He's already won on the DP World Tour. Super young guy, gaining tee to green, has shown he can, putt on Bermuda, and the tee to green numbers otherwise are good. And I still think, you're just going to be a little bit uncomfortable with a lot of guys' numbers. Like Bridgman at 25-1. I'm still thinking about it because he's playing really well. I'm okay having a tighter card this week, but I do like what Rio's doing, and I don't think he's let his foot off the gas since the start of the year. A couple other guys on this page. I would say Aaron Rye is interesting for a course like this. Max Homa is a good value there at 68-1. I forgot he was in this event when I was doing all the research because he wasn't anywhere near like the top of the world golf rankings. But he's not playing poorly. He's just playing like very above average at the moment. And this might just be a year where I want to be early on Homa because I do think, I don't know how imminent it is, but I do think we're going to see the Homa of old at some point in 2026.
Same.
So I'm interested in him. And the last guy on this page, I like Taylor Moore.
Yeah.
It's lazy going back to all of the, past winners with the sticky course history narrative, but he's been in the mix on the Florida swing a lot, plays really well in Bermuda. Approach play is not up to par with where it was when he won a couple years ago, but 70-1. I mean, the guy's playing well and he plays this course well. So I think that's a great value.
Yeah, B Draddy Ambassador. Shout out B Draddy. John and I got the pocket tees on, official apparel provider and sponsor of Read the Line as well. Taylor Moore, great performance at the COG. He was up there. Like he was in the lead at one point at the Players at like 4 under par. Now this is pretty early on Thursday, but played all 3 events in the Florida swing, made all 3 cuts, second at the Cognizant Classic, going back to a course where he's won. Why not Timo at 70-1? Going into the long shot range, starting at 80-1, you get McGreevy, Meisner, Smotherman there at 85-1, which I kind of like. John, I kind of like Bud Cauley at 90-1. This is a guy who just plays golf really well in the state of Florida. I feel confident in going back to him here. I'm trying to pull his results right now. 4th at this event last year, 18th at the API, 32nd at the Players. Has performed pretty well the last couple of weeks. I spotlighted him in the picture here. I don't mind that price at 90-1 on Collie Buds.
Yeah, Florida guy. I mean, he really came out at the Players last year, where it was like, oh, this is for real. The Bud Cauley comeback is happening. He almost won it. So I mean, he's a great player. Wouldn't be surprised to see him do well this week. A lot of interesting names on this page. I actually think more so, I'm more likely to take a chance on these guys than the page before. Yelam Maraju, I think is how we're saying.
How about him, man?
I mean, he was a trendy bet at Puerto Rico. I knew nothing about the guy, but he has been on a heater lately. Looked really good at the Players. He's more of like a distance guy. So I'm curious how that translates here. But I mean, if you can hold your own at Sawgrass and you're 100-1 the next week, that is value that I'm interested in. And Billy Horschel, 130. I mean, I bet the number on him at the COG and he was in it halfway. And then he kind of blew up when everybody started chirping him on the bear trap. But before he kind of shanked it into the water, he was right in the mix. So he, I believe, didn't qualify for the Players. He was one of the first alternates out. So a little extra time to practice. I love Billy Horschel at 130.
Yeah, Horschel, not a bad number. You mentioned Yelam Maraju. Awesome performance out of him. Was super excited to see how fired up he was to play really well there. 4th best performance all time by a rookie at the Players Championship. So really cool experience for him there. Kind of interested, want to dig a little bit more into Billy Katz, also known as William Mao at 115-1. Has played really well in the Florida swing, T6 at Cognizant, top 24 at the Players Championship. So decent price there for him. But other than that, that kind of puts a wrap on my initial leans this week. Anyone else on the board or in the field this week that you wanted to touch on before we get out of here, John?
I just saw Michael Brennan at the bottom. I didn't realize he was all the way down there. But I mean, the ball striking we know is great. It's been great all season. I prefer the guys who like love Bermuda. I mean, we didn't talk much about Sam Burns. I don't know the reason why Sam Burns is not playing this week. I was shocked to see he's not in the field because he's a favorite year over year. He's won here twice, and his formula to winning here is all putting. I mean, he's game, and it's like you watch the guy putt. It's like you know, it's like watching Tiger in his prime when he comes to Valspar because everything is center cut. It's actually kind of fun to watch. So a little disappointing that Sam Burns isn't here. I don't know why. I hope all's good with him. But I guess to put a bow on who I'm going after, it's like, who is that Sam Burns type that can win a tournament with their putter on Bermuda greens? That's what Peter Malnati did. So you can go that route, or you can go the ball striking route with somebody like a Michael Brennan. Keegan Bradley's been in the mix here. I don't love his form, but that's the type of player, you know, who can take on these risky pins and the water, and a confident ball striker. So one of those two routes I think you can take this week.
Johnny, good show, brother. Congrats again on the Cameron Young win. Thank you to our sponsors. Obviously, Read the Line. Of course, Wolfhammer. Live from the Tout House will be up this week. My Golf Digest Power Rankings for the Valspar Championship will be up this week. Please sub over to the Read the Line YouTube channel. Like, comment, tell us who you think is going to win the 2026 Valspar Championship. We wish all of you the best of luck this week. Enjoy the final event of the Florida Swing. We will catch you next week. On behalf of John, I'm Joe. We're out of here. See you next week. Peace, gang.